watched my Sheridan video from last year, you might remember that when the Sheridan was first introduced, it was pretty rough, but later on it was pretty well liked. Well, we were actually lucky enough to interview someone that crewed them, and it was really insightful, so I'll just go ahead and roll that now.
Yeah, so I joined the Army National Guard at 17, and I was on M60 A3s for 4.5 years, and then I went active duty just in time for Desert Storm. So, and we were on, we deployed over there on M1 IPs, and then for Christmas, they gave us brand new M1 A1 Heavy Deltas. So that's what we actually went to war with. I've been on every variant of the M1 tank, from, like I said, from the M1 IPs all the way up to the newest M1 A2s. In fact, I was at Fort Hood when they brought out the first 5 test bed M1 A2s and got to spend a little bit of time testing those out. That was, early 90s. I think that was around 93 when we had those there. And then as far as the Sheridans themselves, I was only on Sheridans at Fort Irwin as part of the Op 4, the National Training Center, and that was from 1999 to 2001. Now I am a armor master gunner, also a small arms master gunner, and I was both the Abrams master gunner and an instructor for the marksmanship training unit for the 82nd Airborne Division. So I'm very familiar with the ASOP, the Airborne Standard Operating Procedures, including doing airdrops for the Sheridan. They were bringing back the 173 Rista squadrons, which is what back in the day, back in the early 90s, they're the ones that had the Sheridans. So I'm pretty familiar with how they were operating back then, and I had friends that did spend time on Sheridans in the 82nd Airborne.
And so, of course, you were using Sheridans in the capacity of the NTC, or the National Training Center. For those who aren't aware, how were you using the Sheridans at the NTC, and what was your overall responsibility? As in, what were you contributing to the NTC at that time?
So the Sheridans weren't exactly used as light armored vehicles or armored reconnaissance vehicles. They were used to simulate either the BMPs or the T-72 tanks.
Right. So when you're saying that you commanded a T-72 and then the BMP, those being with some pretty heavy air quotes attached, is that correct?
Yes. Now they actually do have BMP ones and T-72s that you can take out on rotation there, that have the miles attached to them. So every once in a while, a person would get to ride on one of those, a real one.
Well, so you mentioned that you transitioned, you were 19 Echo, and transitioned from cavalry on the M60A3s to the M551s. What was that experience like, or what was that transition like?
I was on the M60 tanks back in the 80s, and then I was on the M1s from 90 to 99, and then I spent my time on the Sheridans from 99 to 2001. The Sheridans are very, very easy to operate, more so than even really running an a Humvee. You just get in them and go. Going from an M1 tank to a Sheridan is like going back in time. So the equipment was very simple and much easier to use.
And going from the M1 to the M551, how was the maintenance comparatively? Was the Sheridan a maintenance-intensive vehicle compared to the Abrams, or was there really not much of a difference at all?
Oh no, the M1 is very maintenance intensive. One of the things I like to tell people is we spend about 80% of our time doing maintenance and 20% of our time actually having fun on the M1. The Sheridan was very simple. Everything is lighter, which means less wear and tear. For example, a track block, just one track block on an M1 weighs 80 pounds, where one on a Sheridan weighs like 8 pounds. So all the running gear, the road wheels, the sprockets, one person can do all the work that you need to do on one of them. The only major issues that we had were maintaining the engine, because it was a water-cooled engine operating in the desert. You just had to keep an eye on the temperature gauge more than anything else.
One of the reliability issues that the Sheridan was known for early in its service were electrical faults and electrical issues with the Sheridan. By the time that you were serving in them, this was 1999, so they were well beyond their early teething period. Did you still have any issues with the electrical systems on the Sheridan? Was there much of a concern about that?
No, we didn't really have any kind of mechanical issues at all on ours, and I would attribute that to us serving in the desert versus a more humid environment such as Vietnam or Panama. I did have friends that jumped into Panama, and I think they had some issues. So, either getting moisture into the electrical system or just corrosion in general would have caused a lot of those issues.
So what was the space and living accommodations on the Sheridan like? Was it a very cramped vehicle, or was there a lot of space like something in the M48 or M60? Did you feel that you had enough room around it? And how was living accommodations in the Sheridan after you had completed your daily tasks? Was there any space that you could sleep or rest in the vehicle comfortably?
Well, there's never enough space in the tank. Your ammunition and fuel is going to take up pretty much every square inch that you need. We have a combat vehicle crewman bag, and that's pretty much all you have. Like your niceties that you're going to take inside with you. You can stuff some things in little nooks and crannies here and there, but for example, on the Sheridan, the driver's seat, both sides of that, on either side, I should say, were ammunition racks, and then you had in the turret on the loader side, you had stand-up racks for your ready ammunition. So, yeah, I don't think there's a tank out there except for maybe the Merkava where there's extra room to put anything. The M60A3, I believe, was the one that had the most spare room, I would say.
During your 2-year experience with the Sheridan, did you participate in any training exercise with the vehicle? And assuming that you did you feel pride with the capability of your vehicle and crew? Or did you always feel that you were at a disadvantage when conducting exercises?
The main purpose of the OPFOR at the National Training Center is to conduct training. So 1 week a month, 11 months out of the year, we conducted training exercises. And that's more than any other unit in the United States Army. So you could actually say that we were better trained there than any other unit. As far as operating on the equipment itself, I would have felt comfortable taking a Sheridan, maybe not those exact same ones, but taking a Sheridan into combat, because they simply worked. They were very simple vehicles, easy to maintain, and other than as I mentioned, having a water-cooled engine operating in the desert, that was the only major issue that we ever had with them.
And during your time serving on the Sheridan, what was your overall impression of the vehicle? Do you know any particular virtues or faults? And do you believe that the Sheridan's perception as a pariah among the U.S. Army is justified?
Well, when you first asked me that, whether it was a pariah, I had never heard that before in the armor community. Everybody I know of liked operating on the Sheridans. That might have come from operating in Vietnam in an environment where it was not tactically feasible to operate them in. It's like using armor in a city. That's not what they're designed to do. So that's more of a tactical fault than a fault of the vehicle itself.
In essence, beyond even just the Army, the sort of public perception that the Sheridan was a failure, you wouldn't agree with that perception or that opinion?
Oh, absolutely not. It did exactly what it was supposed to do quite well, as far as I'm concerned.
And
The only thing I can think of that wasn't a success with the Sheridan would have been the Shillelagh missile. Back in the '60s, ATGMs were in vogue, so that's kind of the way they wanted to go. They wanted everything to have a missile on it. But if they would have just stuck with just the gun system, I think the system or the entire platform would have operated much better.
If you could go back to the Cadillac engineers, turn of the 1960s, while the Sheridan was still in development, and you could, from on high, ordain one change in the design of the Sheridan, what would that be and why?
Other than possibly making the electrical systems more robust, less susceptible to corrosion, as we mentioned before, I think just canceling the Shillelagh missile system and sticking with the 152 millimeter gun would have made the platform a lot more reliable.
I know I've been pretty silent so far. That's because Stinky is Sheridan fanboy number one. But I guess my favorite.
I love the
question,
Sheridan.
I guess. Okay, fanboy number two then. I guess my question would be: do you have any fun stories, or can you recall anything interesting from your time, using the Sheridan as a target stand-in, or Op 4 stand-in, I should say?
Oh man, see, the thing about being Op 4 is you don't have to play by NATO rules. Our rules of engagement are very, very, very loose. And we also have the home field advantage. And we spend all of our time out there in the training area. So you can have one or two tanks either pin down or destroy one or two M1 companies until they actually figure out where you're at and start calling artillery on you. You can scare them into submission almost. But when I was a reconnaissance platoon leader, that was probably my favorite time, and on the Sheridans, because I had a BMP, Vismont BMP, and it was my job to sneak behind enemy lines, and all I was doing was calling in enemy positions and calling in artillery. And that was probably the funnest time I ever had. Well, the Sheridan, is really easy. One person can do all the maintenance, really. In fact, I had my dad when he was, he would have been 65, 66. He came to visit me at Fort Irwin, and I was getting ready to go do a battle, go to training. And I asked my unit if he could go with me as my gunner, and they said sure. And I had him out there, and we had to change the sprocket, and I was like, there you go. I said, here's my tools, throw him the bag of tools, and told him what to do, and he loved it. He was a millwright for 42 years at a lumber mill. So basically, he repaired the machines at the lumber mill. So very cool.
You already knew what to do then.
Well, he absolutely loved it. I broke the track for him, and then said, okay, loosen up these bolts. Sorry, said loosen up these bolts and take that off, put this on, and
Well, there's a story where the vehicle is the Sheridan.
So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you guys want to see more interviews like this, it'd really help if you left a like and a comment. As always, if you guys have suggestions for video topics, leave them in the comments, and I'll see you on the next one.